The air in the forest carried a silence that felt heavier than usual, as though the trees themselves were holding their breath. The trail that once seemed familiar had faded into shadows, and the comforting sounds of voices had been swallowed by distance. What was once an adventurous path now stretched endlessly, every turn revealing only more towering trees, more rustling leaves, and more uncertainty. The realization slowly settled in, like a cold weight pressing against the chest, that there was no guiding hand nearby, no familiar face to follow, no echo of laughter to chase. It was just stillness, interrupted only by the occasional crack of a twig or the distant cry of a bird. Panic began as a whisper, but quickly grew louder inside the mind. The forest that once seemed alive with beauty now loomed with unfamiliarity, every shadow appearing deeper, every sound sharper. The ground crunched beneath uncertain steps, each one hesitant, unsure whether to move forward or stay rooted in the same spot. Questions flooded in without answers. Which way led home? Had the path been left too far behind? Would anyone notice the absence before nightfall? The weight of not knowing pressed harder than the branches that brushed against the arms. The sun, once a comfort, had started its slow descent, leaving streaks of orange and gold through the canopy. What was once a warm glow now carried dread, for with every fading ray came the promise of darkness. The idea of nightfall in the forest felt unbearable. Shadows would stretch longer, blending into one another until even the nearest tree could appear as a towering figure. The thought of being wrapped in that darkness without protection ignited a rush of fear so strong that the body trembled with it. The mind raced back to familiar comforts, warm meals, soft beds, laughter filling safe spaces. Those memories, once taken for granted, became painful reminders of what was now missing. The emptiness was not only in the surroundings, but in the heart, too. Loneliness crept in, heavier than hunger or thirst, making every moment ache with longing for something as simple as a reassuring voice. The silence of the forest, broken only by the distant chirping of insects, became unbearable, like a reminder of being completely cut off from everything known. Every sound in the distance brought a mixture of fear and hope. The rustle of leaves could mean danger, yet it also sparked the desperate thought that maybe, just maybe, someone was searching. Each gust of wind carried with it both relief and unease. Relief that the air was still moving. Unease because it reminded that the world continued on even while everything felt at a standstill. Even the trees seemed endless, stretching high into the sky, almost mocking in their immovability. No matter where the eyes turned, it was the same view repeated endlessly, as if trapped in a living maze. Breathing became shallow, quick, each inhale carrying the sharp scent of damp earth and fallen leaves. The body was present, but the mind wandered back and forth between reality and imagination. A strong longing for safety pulled harder than anything else. The forest seemed alive, whispering through its branches, making it impossible to tell whether those whispers offered comfort or warnings. The heart pounded louder than footsteps, as though the fear inside was trying to break free. Time became difficult to measure. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and the sinking sun only heightened the sense of urgency. Each step forward carried the fear of moving further away from safety, yet staying still seemed just as dangerous. The struggle was not just against the vastness of the forest, but against the emotions swelling inside, the desperation, the confusion, the helplessness. The weight of being unseen and unheard pressed down with crushing force. The thought that no one knew the exact place of standing turned into a sharp ache. It was not the forest alone that was frightening. It was the vast possibility of being forgotten within it. The simple truth of being small against such overwhelming nature, brought a sense of vulnerability that no words could ease. As the sky shifted from orange to a dim blue, the forest grew colder. The crisp air bit against the skin, and with it came the awareness that warmth was something no longer guaranteed. The distant calls of animals echoed, each one a reminder that the forest was full of life, but not the kind that offered comfort. Every instinct pulled toward the need for safety, yet there was none to be found. In that moment, fear and loneliness blended into one, creating a silence so loud it filled every thought. The towering trees, the endless paths, the fading light, all stood as reminders of being cut off from what was familiar, from what was safe. The realization of separation was no longer just a thought. It was a feeling that ran through every vein, heavy and consuming, leaving nothing but the desperate hope that somehow, against the odds. This was not the end of the journey, but only the beginning of being found again. Hunger arrived quietly at first, just a soft ache in the stomach, but it grew sharper with every passing hour. The forest floor offered little comfort, only scattered berries whose safety was uncertain, and leaves that carried no relief. The body, once full of energy, felt weaker with every step, as though strength was leaking away with time itself. Thirst soon joined the hunger, lips dry and throat burning with the simple wish for a drop of clean water. Every stream heard in the distance brought a surge of hope, yet finding it meant pushing through branches, stumbling over roots, and fighting against exhaustion. The search for something so basic became the only focus, each thought turning toward survival. Nights were cruelest. The warmth of the sun faded quickly, leaving the forest shrouded in cold that wrapped itself around shivering skin. Each gust of wind carried a chill that pierced through thin clothing, making rest nearly impossible. Sleep was shallow, broken by the snap of twigs and the eerie calls of unseen creatures. The darkness seemed endless, pressing against the eyes until even imagination felt dangerous. Every sound became amplified: the hoot of an owl, the rustle of leaves, the snapping of branches in the underbrush. The mind could not separate what was real from what was feared, making the nights stretch longer than the days. The ground beneath was hard and unyielding, covered with damp soil and rough stones. Lying there made bones ache, but standing too long drained whatever energy remained. Each morning began not with the comfort of rest, but with the stiffness of a body that had been pushed beyond its limits. Small scratches on the skin from thorny branches burned with every movement, and feet grew sore from walking aimlessly over uneven earth. Survival was not only about finding food and water, but also about enduring pain, ignoring the body's cries for relief, and pushing forward through discomfort that seemed endless. The mind played tricks in the struggle. Images of warm meals and safe shelter appeared as though they were within reach, only to vanish into the reality of endless trees. The thought of familiar faces brought both comfort and sorrow, a reminder of what was missing and what felt so far away. Yet those very thoughts became the fuel to keep going. The possibility of reunion, of making it out, of feeling safe once again, became the quiet fire that burned inside even when the body threatened to give up. Every decision carried weight. Turning left or right could mean the difference between finding water or getting further lost. Moving forward or staying still became questions of survival. The forest offered no signs, no clear direction, only paths that looked the same, winding endlessly beneath the towering canopy. The feeling of being trapped within a maze grew stronger, yet the will to escape it never faded completely. Desperation pushed every step forward, even when the legs trembled with fatigue. The sun, though harsh during the day, became a guide. Its movement through the sky offered a sense of time, a fragile connection to something familiar. When light streamed through the branches, there was a sense of possibility, a belief that somewhere beyond those trees lay safety. The rays gave a small measure of warmth against the cold nights, and a reason to keep searching during the day. Even when the body faltered, the presence of sunlight whispered that there was still hope. Moments of small victories stood out amidst the suffering. A trickle of water discovered along the rocks, cold and refreshing, brought relief greater than any feast. A patch of ground softer than the rest provided rest for aching limbs. The sound of birds in the distance reminded that life continued all around, offering both companionship and guidance. These moments, though fleeting, provided the strength to endure the struggle, proof that not everything was despair. But fear never left. The awareness of wild animals lurking beyond sight was constant. The howl of a distant predator or the sudden movement of bushes sent waves of panic through the body. Each sound brought the realization of vulnerability, of being small and unprotected in a vast wilderness. Survival was not just about hunger and thirst. It was about guarding against the unknown dangers that surrounded from every side. Exhaustion threatened to overcome resolve more than once. The body begged to stop, to surrender, to lie down and let the forest decide the outcome. Yet something deeper than fear refused to allow it. Each time weariness whispered that it was over, a stronger voice inside rose up, demanding one more step, one more breath, one more chance to keep moving forward. That silent strength became the true weapon in the struggle, more powerful than any food or shelter could provide. Days blurred together, each one carrying the same challenges: hunger gnawing, thirst burning, cold biting, fear haunting. Yet beneath it all was the unbroken will to survive. The forest was vast and unforgiving, but determination refused to be silenced. Even as weakness grew, the spirit held firm, clinging to the belief that beyond the trees and shadows, there was still a way back to safety, a way to endure until help arrived. Darkness came swiftly, as though the forest itself had pulled a heavy curtain across the sky. The last traces of sunlight dissolved into shadows, leaving the world painted in shades of black and gray. The air grew colder, the ground damp beneath tired feet, and the silence became heavier, broken only by the distant calls of night creatures. Fear pressed close in those hours, thick and suffocating. Yet even in that suffocating gloom, a small ember of hope refused to die out. Every flicker of light carried meaning. The faint glow of the moon peeking through the branches above felt like a lantern hung by unseen hands, a gentle reminder that even in the deepest darkness, light still existed. Stars scattered across the sky added to that comfort. They appeared steady, eternal, like watchful eyes that promised the world was bigger than fear, and that safety was not an impossible dream. Gazing upward at them brought calm, as though they whispered quietly to keep holding on, that every night eventually gives way to dawn. The forest itself offered signs of reassurance. The rustling of leaves no longer sounded only like warnings, but also like songs of life that continued regardless of fear. Crickets chirped rhythmically, frogs croaked near hidden streams, and the wind hummed softly through the tall branches. These sounds created a strange kind of companionship, reminders that solitude did not mean abandonment. The realization grew that the forest was not only a place of danger, but also one of resilience, where life persisted even under harshness. That persistence stirred strength within, echoing the possibility of survival. Imagination became a shield. In the darkest moments, when the weight of fear seemed unbearable, thoughts turned toward warmth and comfort remembered from safer times. Pictures of laughter, the taste of sweet food, and the softness of shelter rose vividly in the mind. They were not painful reminders but guiding lights, helping to endure the endless hours of cold and uncertainty. Clinging to those images provided courage, as though each memory was a promise that such safety could be found again. Small discoveries during those nights nurtured hope further. The cool trickle of water hidden beneath rocks quenched burning thirst. A patch of dry ground sheltered from the wind gave relief against the biting cold. Even the simple act of surviving one more night became proof that endurance was possible. Each morning that followed was not just another day, but a victory over the fear that had threatened to consume. The mind learned to search for signs of guidance in the smallest details. The direction of bird calls at dawn, the warmth of the sun breaking through the canopy, and the scent of fresh earth after dew. All became tools for orientation and motivation. Nature itself seemed to offer hints that there was still a way out, still a chance to reach safety. Trusting those signs, however faint, became the compass in the absence of familiar paths. Hope also grew stronger in the belief that somewhere beyond the endless trees, others were searching. The thought of footsteps drawing closer, of voices breaking through the silence, lifted the spirit even when the body felt weak. That invisible thread of connection became unbreakable. Even when the forest seemed indifferent, that belief created the courage to take one more step, to endure one more night. The struggle against despair was constant. There were moments when darkness felt overwhelming, when the silence pressed too tightly, when hunger and thirst clawed mercilessly at strength. But even then, the faintest glimmer of hope, whether in the form of a star above, a rustle that hinted at water, or the memory of a familiar face, was enough to keep despair from winning completely. Hope was fragile but unyielding, like a small flame that refused to be extinguished by the strongest winds. Each sunrise after a long night felt like a miracle. Golden light piercing through branches brought warmth not only to the skin, but to the heart. The world seemed less frightening when bathed in morning glow. It was proof that no night, no matter how long or terrifying, could last forever. With each dawn came renewed determination, a reminder that persistence carried rewards. Surviving one night meant the possibility of surviving another, and eventually, of finding the way back to safety. This hope was not loud or dramatic. It was quiet, steady, and stubborn. It lived in the smallest details: the sound of running water, the glow of stars, the warmth of sunlight, the resilience of memory. It was hope that turned fear into strength, loneliness into endurance, and darkness into a space where light still managed to shine. And though the struggle was constant, that hope remained the most powerful tool for survival, guiding every breath, every step, every heartbeat through the vast silence of the forest. The forest had grown familiar in its vastness, a place of endless shadows, rustling branches, and the steady rhythm of survival. Yet beneath the resilience that had carried through countless hours of fear and struggle lay a yearning so powerful it could not be silenced. The longing to be seen, to be found, to no longer feel invisible within the wilderness. Each day stretched into nights of cold and trembling, and each night gave way to mornings of cautious hope. Still, there lingered an unshakable question: would the end of this ordeal ever come? Then, in a moment as sudden as it was surreal, sound broke through the silence. Not the distant cry of a bird or the rustle of unseen animals, but something different: voices. At first faint, carried by the wind, they stirred disbelief. Could it be imagination again? Another cruel trick of the mind weaving comfort out of loneliness. But the sound grew clearer, sharper, undeniable. It was the rhythm of footsteps on dry leaves, the cadence of human voices calling into the distance. Hope, once cautious and fragile, surged with a force that overtook the exhaustion of the body. Every sense sharpened. The forest no longer felt indifferent, but alive with possibility. The branches that once seemed only to block the path now swayed as if guiding the way. Breath quickened, heart pounded, and trembling legs gathered strength from reserves, thought long depleted. Each step toward the sound carried both fear and anticipation. The fear that it might fade away, that it might not be real, and the anticipation that this could be the moment when the ordeal finally ended. And then, through the trees, shapes appeared. Figures moving with urgency, eyes scanning the undergrowth, voices growing louder with every step. The sight was overwhelming, a collision of relief and disbelief. For so long, the forest had been filled only with solitude. Now it held the presence of others. The air itself felt lighter, the crushing silence broken, replaced by the sound of life rushing back into the world. The first moment of recognition was like a floodgate opening. Tears came without command, flowing freely, washing away the weight of days spent in fear and uncertainty. Relief poured out in sobs and shaking breaths, each one carrying the release of pent-up terror. The exhaustion that had been endured for so long finally found permission to collapse, not from weakness, but from the comfort of knowing the struggle was over. Arms reached out, wrapping in an embrace that dissolved the distance of those endless days. The warmth of human touch contrasted sharply with the cold nights endured alone. The trembling body was held firmly, reassuringly, as though to promise that no harm would come again. Words spilled out soft, broken, filled with emotion, though their meaning was secondary to the sheer sound of voices that carried love and relief. Faces once only imagined in moments of despair now appeared vividly, wet with tears, etched with both anguish and joy. The expressions revealed the depth of fear carried during the separation and the immense gratitude of reunion. Every look was a reassurance, every tear a testament to love that had never stopped searching, never stopped hoping. The pain of the past days was heavy, but in that moment it seemed to dissolve beneath the tidal wave of connection. The journey out of the forest felt entirely different from the days spent lost within it. Each step no longer carried uncertainty but guidance. The towering trees that once loomed as barriers now seemed less threatening, their shadows pierced by the light of rescue. The forest remained vast, but no longer lonely. The path ahead was clear not because it was familiar, but because it was filled with the presence of others who would not let go. Exhaustion still weighed heavily, but it was softened by the comfort of safety. Even hunger and thirst seemed less urgent in the glow of reunion. The warmth of belonging overshadowed the sharpness of physical need. Every glance exchanged, every reassuring word spoken, became nourishment for the spirit. The simple act of not being alone was more powerful than any food or shelter could ever be. As the forest slowly gave way to open spaces, the scale of what had been endured began to settle in. The fear of being forgotten, the endless nights of trembling, the desperate search for water and shelter, all of it was now part of the past, woven into memory. Yet instead of lingering as torment, those memories transformed into proof of resilience, of survival against impossible odds. They became a story not of despair but of strength, bound together by the miracle of reunion. The moment of returning to familiar sights was filled with emotion so overwhelming it defied description. The ordinary became extraordinary. The sight of a home, the feel of soft bedding, the taste of food, the sound of laughter echoing in safe spaces. Every detail, once overlooked in daily life, now carried immeasurable value. Gratitude seeped into every breath, every heartbeat, as the weight of isolation fully lifted. Tears continued to flow, not just from relief, but from the deep recognition of love that had never faltered. The embrace of family, the comfort of knowing that no distance, no darkness, no wilderness could sever the bond, filled every corner of the heart. Fear was replaced with peace, uncertainty with belonging, and loneliness with a renewed understanding of connection. It was not merely a rescue, it was a rebirth into the safety of love and the certainty of never truly being alone again.